With all the tubes in place, it's time to get a bunch of small jobs checked off the list. In this video, I'll clean up the seat stay fillets, braze the full fillets on the main triangle and monostay, ream and slot the seat tube, drill a drain hole in the bottom bracket shell, make and bend the serial number badge, bend the head tube badge, and finally, I'll make some reinforcements for the dropouts. The first task is to clean up the seat stay fillets. I'm only planning to braze with bronze one more time, so I want to make sure the seat stay and chain stay fillets don't need any touch-ups. After getting them cleaned up, they looked good. Once the stays are done, I can move to the final fillets on the main triangle and monostay. Up to this point, the main joints only have a small tinning fillet, nothing with enough structure for a mountain bike frame. There are three main areas I need to build up larger fillets: the head tube joints, the seat cluster, and the bottom bracket cluster. Of the three, the bottom bracket cluster is by far the most difficult. 3 tubes and a yoke, all with overlapping fillets. It never turns out looking as nice as I hope, especially with the thick yoke plates, but I feel pretty good about its strength. The area gets fluxed, preheated, then brazed. I'm using 3 30-second brazing rod for the final fillets. The thicker rods let me add more bronze more quickly. All this gets repeated again for the head tube joints and the seat tube cluster. One thing about doing the fillets separately is that I don't have to actually soak the joints a second time. Since there was no fresh flux inside the tubes, I just pour hot water on the outside of the joint to wash off the flux. I also have 2 water tubs, so I can reuse the water a few times while it's still hot. The main fillets turned out pretty good and should clean up nicely, especially the head tube and seat tube clusters. Once all the fillets are done, I'm done brazing with bronze. The brazing from here on out will be with silver. Because I'm done with the higher heat brazing, I'm at the point where I can bring it to my local bike shop for facing and chasing. When I bring the frame to the bike shop, I like to have a seat post installed so they don't have to directly clamp the frame. And the first step in installing the seat post is reaming and honing the seat tube. After making sure the seat tube is clean and free of burrs, and then I can insert and remove a seat post without it getting scratched, it's ready for the slot. To mark the center line of the seat tube, I use a trick I learned from Paul Brody's videos. I make sure the frame is vertical, then I hold a file perpendicular to the frame and drag it across the tube. Brody used a ruler, but it's the same idea. The slot, including the hole at the end, is 35 millimeters long. From what I've read, a short slot can be the cause of a slipping seat post. And being 6'6" and 230 pounds, I need all the help I can get keeping the seat post in place. You also don't want to tighten the seat collar too much when you're running a dropper post, and the longer slot should help reduce the need for over-tightening. Once the hole is drilled and the slot is cut, I smooth all the interior edges of the slot so there aren't any burrs or sharp edges to dig into the seat post. Then it's onto the drain hole for the bottom bracket shell. I make sure the frame is sitting as it will when it's built up, and I do the file trick again. I mark and punch the location, and drill a hole with a number 4 center drill. Next up is the head badge. When I built my first frame, it seemed naked without some sort of branding. I didn't want to bother making decals, so I decided on a copper head badge. I cut out that first head badge by hand, but then I got about 10 of these laser cut a few years ago. I was originally a chemistry major in college, and 56 is the mass number for iron, which is the main element in steel. To bend the head tube, I use my little arbor press and 2 thick-walled steel tubes that have inner and outer diameters similar to a 44 millimeter head tube. In the past, I've used automotive double-sided tape or silver brazing to attach the head badge. I was considering bolting it on this time, but I'll probably just silver braze it. Then comes the serial number badge, also made of copper. I've tried using a hammer to punch the serial number, but I've had much better luck with the arbor press. Then it gets bent in the same manner as the head badge. The diameters of a T47 bottom bracket shell and a 44 millimeter head tube are within a few millimeters of each other. The last item on the list is to make some plates to fill in the lower window of the dropouts. I've seen a couple other frame builders do this to strengthen the dropout, especially for bikes that'll get ridden off-road. I have an older pair of these dropouts, and compared to the newer ones I'm using on this bike, it looks like Paragon did make the windows smaller at some point. But the concern is there in the back of my mind, and I really don't want to replace a dropout further down the road. I had some pieces of 3mm 4130 plate around, traced the shape of the windows, and rough cut them with the angle grinder. Then I used a handheld belt sander with the Cubitron belt to fine-tune the shape. And that's it for this video. Lots of little jobs checked off the list, and now the frame is ready for facing and chasing as soon as my local bike shop can get me in. In the next video, I'll be silver brazing the head tube and serial number badges, all the cable guides and stops, and the plates for the dropout windows. If I have time, I'll also be smoothing the new fillets. If you want to see how the rest of the build goes, be sure and hit the like and subscribe button so you'll see the next video when it's published. If you're enjoying this video series, consider a super thanks. And if you haven't watched the other videos in the series, go check them out. Thanks for watching, take care, see you next time.